Hello and welcome. It's 10:30. It is the 18th day of November 2021. I have a cold. I am your guide to all the tabletop role-playing game news, weather, sports, conspiracies and conflict, and general internet nonsense that is the OGGM. The weather today is bright but cold here in Ventura, so it looks like we're finally getting something resembling a winter. Yesterday on Gatekeepers over at Legion of Myth, they talked about games that I would recommend other than Dungeons and Dragons, or games that are, better, different, do the same thing, other games that I think people should play, kind of thing. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to take part of that because of reasons, so I decided to do it instead today. So taking a list of some of the games that I would recommend for a different or better experience than Dungeons and Dragons, or games that are just good but aren't Dungeons and Dragons, or games that I would like people to play and understand and explore. And I thought we'd start with taking a look at all the games that are available for our younger audience. We've got kids who are 7, 9, 10, 13 who are being exposed to the idea of role-playing because of YouTube, and they're like, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons, but maybe Dungeons and Dragons is a little too complicated or a little inappropriate or not really designed for that age group. And there are other games, lots of games out there that are designed with a younger audience in mind. So let's take a look at them. And of course, the top of the list, we've got No Thank You Evil from Monty Cook Games, which is sort of a very young kid oriented tabletop role-playing game for kids. Basically, you have three things that your character can do, and then you just sort of go through wonderful, almost Saturday morning kid cartoon gummy bear type adventures with these kids. There's also Hero Kids, which I think the picture we're looking at is from, which is sort of like an idea of Dungeons and Dragons, but Dungeons and Dragons with kids. Of course, actually sending out kids to fight monsters is a horrible idea, but it's just sort of that, Saturday morning cartoon, imaginary fantasy kind of thing. Other games we have are Mall Kids, Paws, Here to Slay, Kids on Bikes, Kids on Brooms. We have a lot of the games that are trying to emulate that Stranger Thing, kids on bikes, kids having adventure ideas. That is the main source of a lot of the tabletop role-playing games designed for kids. So Kids on Bikes is basically, like the name says, a game about, those Saturday mornings where the kids are on their bikes having adventures. Think Erie, Indiana, or Goonies, that type of game, that very Stranger Thing like that. Kids on Brooms is basically Harry Potter. It's the idea of kids going to magical school and having magical adventure. Mall Kids is the same idea. Or kids who are, just out of school, hanging out in the mall till you can go home in the 80s, 90s. And again, adventures happen. We have Green Dawn Mall, which is the same thing, idea. And of course, we have Tales from the Loop and Year of the Flood, which are amazing games and are also deal with childhood in the 80s, childhood in the 90s, adventures that kids imagine, that Saturday morning cartoon idea of kids going on adventures and the adults not really, around. Again, perfect ideas would be like Goonies, Erie, Indiana, the new Ghostbusters movies that just came out, anything, where you have kids going on adventures. There's a lot of British things like the Sarah Jane Adventures or Spectrals or stuff like that. Then we have games that are a little bit more like, here is D&D, but it's D&D for kids. So games like Here to Slay, Honey Heist, Scum and Villainy, Modern Mythology, all sorts of these games are games that, you can play with a little bit older kids who maybe you don't feel D&D is appropriate. And of course, the big thing is also like storytelling, and especially with kids playing, you maybe want to gear away towards just the dice mechanics and more towards just enriching the children's environment and in imagination while using the game to help reinforce skills of like math, color recognition, learning, communication, conflict resolution, gross and fine motor skills, all the things that you want kids to get better at. And you can use it through the entertainment and education aspect of role playing. So there we go. There's some of the games that I would recommend. Now I'm going to go into depth a little further in a separate vlog about the number one game I would recommend right now and some of the other games I'd recommend besides Dungeons and Dragons for beginners. I definitely have a list, and I definitely have some things that I think, but this is really going for kids. I will make a link to this list down below. So if you're looking for a good game to play with a younger audience who is interested in getting into Dungeons and Dragons and that type of environment, but maybe you feel D&D is not quite the game for like a 9-year-old or a 7-year-old, you might want to try Kids on Bikes. You might want to try Hero Kids. You might want to try No Thank You Evil. You might want to try Mouse Guard or Mystics and Mice. Kids on Bikes, Kids on Brooms. All these games that are sort of emulating that childhood experience. Or you could just go for like one of the Star Wars role-playing games. Because kids, Star Wars. And also next year we have a new Marvel role-playing game coming out, and kids are just being inundated with the Marvel and the MCU. So next year I'd probably say check out this new Marvel superhero role-playing game and see if that's good. If you're trying to get that Stranger Thing vibe, Kids on Bikes, Detention and Demigorgons, and Tales from the Loop are all good starts for if you're trying to emulate that Stranger Things vibe. So that's my starter list for games I would recommend for kids. We will go into further in the games that I recommend for beginners who aren't kids and why. Unfortunately, some of the ones on my list aren't in print anymore. So anyways, this is an overview. We'll go into deeper in a separate vlog. If you appreciate the content, let me know. If you never want to hear me talk about this subject ever again, let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Help me hit 1,000 subs by January 1st, 2022. And I will plug in the real camera and show you my cat. Since those are the two things most people have been requesting is seeing my face and seeing my cat. So if I hit 1,000 subs by January 1st, 2022, you'll get that. Till then, I have been the OGGM, recovering from a cold. Talk to you later. Happy holidays.